Hi, who's Derek here? Who's talking with famous people? I'm in the room here with Kaizo and Kit Kats and Cade and Mary and Gusset Potato. Anyway, we're talking about toxic masculinity. We're talking about the Gillette commercial, and I just watched it for the first time. I watched it in the context of this other video that was making fun of it, but regardless, I managed to see the whole commercial as far as I could tell. And uh, my takeaway from it was, my response to it was, I don't think it necessarily has a bad message. I just think it does a shit poor job of conveying that message. At which point, Kaizo conveyed the idea that its message is actually one that masculinity is inherently toxic and or bullying or whatever else or whatever. Make your points, Kaizo.
Right. So the issue of the video is that it's portraying masculinity as if it's inherently toxic, not that these behaviors are toxic, but masculinity itself. Because if you look at the video, there are no female type behaviors that, or at least behaviors that are attributed to females, especially the one about the cyberbullying. Because if you actually look at the stats, it's girls who bully girls online significantly far more than boys do. Yet attributing that whole behavior as masculine and toxic, it's wrong, and B, that's the issue. It's not consistently.
Okay, but I mean, having an opinion about one advocacy perspective or issue doesn't require one to be an advocate for all equivalent issues in order to be justified in advocating for one thing. Just because they're advocating against toxic masculinity doesn't mean they're advocating in favor of toxic femininity, or that there's some failure because they don't advocate against toxic femininity. It's a razor company that's directed towards men. Why would they? I mean, what would be the point of it? Let's inflame the passions of people. I guess that would be the point. Like, stupid bitches doing some stupid ass girl shit again. Would that be a preferable commercial?
Well, it wouldn't happen because the zeitgeist at the moment is that there is a toxic element in male behavior. That's the zeitgeist right now. And things that are outside of that zeitgeist realm won't get publicized.
I mean, is that really the zeitgeist? That's one element of, I guess you'd say, SJW style left understandings of things, but I guess it's part of a major commercial from a big corporation, and so it's representative of some sort of purported cultural norm. But I mean, my point is the cultural norm that it represents there is not necessarily a bad one. I didn't hear them say anything in specific that indicated to me that they were advocating a bad position. The idea that people ought to not bully one another and ought to, respect women and treat them as equal individual human beings and not reduce them to members of their group is something that I'm fully behind. I just think that commercial does a shit poor job of conveying it.
Well, see, actually, though, there's a contradiction, because if that's what you think was happening, well, the contradiction is that actually that's not what happened, because it was reducing males into, we have this toxic behavior based on ourselves. So actually it was reducing males into not individuals but members of a group.
But did it say that? Did it say that the toxic masculinity is an expression of masculinity as a whole, or did it? Well, I mean, it didn't say that. It would seem to me that I can have toxic levels of politeness, for example, which would just utterly destroy our communication right now. If between and after every sentence I said, "I hope you don't mind, Kaiser, but if you please, I'd like to begin to answer this question. If you're ever so kind to allow me to do so," before I ever fucking said anything, right? I could say all that shit, right? And it would be a toxic amount of politeness. Well, I think that, therefore, saying that we can have toxic levels of masculinity, as it's conventionally understood to be.
Well, posit this in the universities where toxic masculinity is conceptualized. There is no inverse. There is no toxic femininity as a concept, right? So that in on itself, the fact that if you can get an inverse,
what do you feel is toxically feminine? What do you feel is toxically feminine?
Well, any traditionally understood feminine behavior that is excessive is utilized in excess. So, for example, not taking responsibility because society would somehow, accept your behavior in certain respects. For one example.
Give me. You're gonna have to explain your warrant here a little more clearly.
Right. Okay. So you could say that being too indirect with your communication and then complaining that you didn't get your point across, that is a toxic feminine behavior.
It's toxic femininity?
Correct.
What's toxic about it, though? It's annoying.
Well, that's the thing. How do you separate between toxic and annoying?
Well, I mean, I think the things that are talking about in there, bullying and reducing women to members of groups and stuff, are fundamentally ontologically violent or rights reducing, in at least conceptually, if not in practice.
Right. But then you see, one of the bullying wasn't had anything to do with masculine behavior. Online bullying is predicated by females, not males.
Okay, but did they show online bullying in there? I thought they just showed boys chasing other boys in the physical world. Oh, they showed some text and stuff.
Yes, that was what they're talking about.
Okay, but all right. So you're saying that wouldn't constitute a masculine form of bullying?
No, not at all. Masculine form of bullying is chasing kids down the street or
okay. So I'll concede this point here, then, Kaizo. I'll concede that in that commercial, if they want to maintain argumentational defensibility regarding the whole thing, then they really ought not to have included the instance of text bullying, because that would not necessarily comprise toxic masculinity. That would, if you want to be able to defend the rest of it, you have to exclude that, because that wouldn't be an instance of toxic masculinity.
Exactly. And if they have that, and clearly it's not a masculine form of bullying, then you can suggest that, or it suggests that the commercial isn't really about trying to weed out the toxic element in masculine energy. It's actually just demonizing men. Because
I think they just had mission creep, though. You could easily as well argue they had mission creep, that they thought, well, if we're going to be addressing bullying as a kind of toxic masculinity, especially physical bullying, we shouldn't neglect to mention that you can also have toxic text bullying or something. But, I don't necessarily think that would not qualify as toxic masculinity. Perhaps, in fact, you could say it's as masculine as the approach to the text goes. So if it depends on the nature of the cruelty, I guess. If it's more FE cruelty in certain ways, then maybe it would be feminine. I don't know. I mean, you'd have to define masculine and feminine a little bit better, I guess.
See, that's the issue. That's the other issue. It's like, if we define it how we choose, which we can, then it becomes a meaningless concept to begin with. Because
but that's why we have to. That's why you and I are debating it out, so that we can come to face up various arguments against each other about which definition makes the most sense and how to delimit the issue such that it can be resolved.
Okay, if we were to make some form of agreement on what constitutes what masculine behavior tends to be behavior that is direct and basically bulldozing kind of effect. You take what you want, you see what you want, you go and you try to take it. That's masculinity. Toxic masculinity could be perhaps taking it without considering the harm or consequences that your behavior might have on the external environment.
Okay, but if I were going to argue on behalf of the Gillette company, I don't know if this is really reflective of something accurate, but if I were arguing on their behalf, I would simply say, first of all, we're talking to men, and so we're talking about toxic examples of behavior by men, and because we're only exclusively talking to men here and about behavior by men, it's all necessarily toxically masculine if it's toxic and expressive of masculine, namely the men.
Well, the other question I ask you is, what is toxic about a man finding a woman attractive and ensuing to gain her interest?
I think that the message there was simply that the man was attempting to catcall her or to reduce her.
No, there was no. In fact, earlier you said that if they had made an actual uttered reference suggesting that men are toxic, you'd agree with me. But in this case, you're utilizing the inverse argument, which is, well, this is what they really meant, but they didn't mean that, and there is no indication that they really meant that.
Listen,
you're making things up
in the absence of any words, but a context which limits the ability of us to decide the issue, namely, what was that character's intention in that scene?
Right.
Based on the data, on that question alone, based on the data that's available to us, I think clearly that guy intended to rape her.
No, what the hell is wrong with you? Are you insane?
Rape her in all of her holes. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because it's a TV commercial, I can see how they would have to go with the most generic example to express, hey, a guy being too aggressive with a woman. I think they're going to have to default to something. They didn't play it out correctly. They played the commercial out poorly. What they're trying to reference with that example, with the guys catcalling and some guys stopping them, I think they're trying to portray, hey, some guys are way too aggressive when approaching a woman. You can approach someone politely.
Right.
The whole thing is guys stepping up. Hey, don't be an asshole. Be a normal dude.
And you know
That's what it's approaching.
Cade, what was fun was the other night when you were telling me how you had tried my patented moves that you use on women, and you had just slayed. And for those of you who haven't heard, I'm just going to quickly lay out these lines. It worked for Cade beautifully. It's worked for Kaizo beautifully, apparently. He's just done wonders with these 4 simple moves. You can get any woman in the world, okay? You begin with, hey, girl. Follow it up with, don't be like that girl. Follow that up with, you know you my world, girl. And then lastly, when you get her alone, you go, ooh, la, la. Boom. That's the combination lock of her panties. Right there.
Right. Well, okay, here's the issue. It's like, if it's not expressed, especially if it was such an open-ended question, you could take it to basically do not approach women because it's wrong to approach and do what you want. Because here's the thing, right? What separates masculine from feminine behavior in one dimension is men are more direct, females are more indirect. Men are more kind of FITE kind of. Women are more FE, which is like, well, how should I best approach this situation without, like causing this, and this? Men are more like, well, I want to do this. Okay. I'm going to do that.
All right. So look, I agree with you that to the extent that we interpret that scene as this guy was just going to go try to talk to that chick, then it is, to the extent that we interpret it as such, okay, then naturally that would not be an example of toxic masculinity. That would be an example of just totally normal, acceptable masculine behavior by somebody who wants to go meet somebody that they think is attractive and wants to go take a shot at it, There's nothing wrong with going and taking a shot at it. You might get shot down. There's something wrong if you continue to bug her after she said shot you down. Then there's something wrong with that. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with going and taking your shot unless there's some indication why you oughtn't, or something. So I agree with you. That would be wrong of the commercial to do that. But I continue to maintain there's a lot of elements in that scene that are conveyed through facial expression and body language that we both know. Like, obviously, one thing was this. First, that guy was going to go rape her. But second, it was actually the second guy's girlfriend. And so the message there was, don't be toxically masculine and put hoes before bros. So it was actually kind of a different kind of message than people interpreted it as.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, don't put hoes before bros. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. It's wrong, but it's a good way to look at it. It's like, well, the other issue I think is that the issues that I can think of is this would never be made if it was basically talking about the negative female behavior that leads to their demise. For example, if you look at the successes of companies and CEOs and all that kind of stuff, sure, there is some masculine toxic behavior, maybe. But the other issue is women's toxic femininity doesn't allow them to become successful. I'm talking about group level, not individual level analysis. Obviously, there's individual.
Okay, but I'm still not sold on the idea that that which is toxically feminine is really toxically feminine. So
okay, I'll explain.
All right, go ahead.
So if you're to say that toxic masculinity is being overly direct without considering the potential harm that your actions might cause, right? So if you see a beautiful woman, you go and say hi.
No, hold on. I would say the thing that makes it toxic is that it's at least quote unquote ontologically violent. That is to say, it treats another person as an means to an end rather than an end in themselves, and it in that sense, it's sort of like metaphysically rights violating. Whether it actually violates rights or not is another question. But that's one reason why something might be toxic, right? Or the other reason it might be toxic is that it's actually violent or it's either actually violent or ontologically violent towards you in some capacity. Otherwise, what makes it toxic?
Well, that's it. It's a direction, though, isn't it? It's not considering that thing as an agent. Well, not necessarily. It's more or less not considering how that thing's going to feel and just doing what you want to do. That's the toxic element of it. It's like you want to build cars. You go and build cars regardless of the emissions that it might cause the environment. You want to start a business. You pay people less even if they can't afford to feed their family. You don't consider all the extrapolated effects that your actions are going to cause. You realize
fine.
that
All right, fine. Look, so let's say about toxic femininity exemplified by the way that catty popular girls bully girls in middle school or something.
Right.
So which company should make that ad about toxic femininity?
Gillette has a female clientele. In fact, maybe just as much as males. Females shave their legs all the time.
Okay, so do you think that... And now, granted, obviously this commercial of theirs didn't appear to work. if their target audience was men, right? But
right.
Do you think Gillette's audience wants to be lectured about that? The female audience?
Well, see, that's the thing. It's almost like it doesn't matter what the audience wants. You got to analyze it within the same framework. If you're going to make one about toxic masculinity, you have to make one about toxic femininity. If you make one like that, then it's fine because you're...
Okay, but then do you have to also make one about animal cruelty and also one about starvation in the third world and also one about everything else in the world? Why do you have to make one about both?
Well, I think it's toxic femininity to tell us that we have to shave, okay?
Oh, you gotta shave.
Not natural.
Oh, come on now. You keep your underarms and your legs and your pubes off of your body. Your underarm hair and your leg, not your legs themselves. You're just the hair on them. Okay,
well,
lady?
see, that's a good point Kit Kat made, actually. It's there will be so much red tape for a female one because it'll be like, well, hang on, what? So we have to now shave? We can't just be ourselves? We can't just be Venus? But men have to shave so they can become soy boys?
Look, women don't have to shave. I'm just saying that if they don't shave, it's gross, and they know it, and let's just stop bullshitting about it.
Right, and also in terms of like the thing, we're talking about duality, male, female. We're not going to animals or that's another abstraction. We could do that, but that's another distinction, like a distinct distinction.
All right, Kit Kat's. Wait, I want to get Kit Kat's response to that. She turned on her mic to respond to that.
I was just gonna say it's anti-beard. I'm against that.
You're anti-beard? Or no,
No, Gillette's anti-beard.
Gillette's anti-beard. Well, in that regard, I have to be against Gillette. Yeah, because I'm pro-beard. I'm also...
I've never used their products before, so...
You've never used a Gillette razor before?
I've never used any razor. I've never shaved myself.
You've never shaved yourself?
No, I get women to do that for me.
Okay. Yeah, so like I said...
There's a lady that does my pedicure and manicure, and she does my beard as well.
I used to have a lady who did my beard as well. I went to, and she cut my hair, but now I have Kimberly and myself.
Oh, okay. Nice. See, you're becoming less toxic now. You're not using women anymore. You're now using yourself. You're just toxic Eric now.
So when I get Kimberly to cut my hair, is that toxic?
Not unless you shave her too, then it's okay.
If I get her to cut my hair and I tell her she's doing a bad job, is that toxic? Only if she's actually doing a bad job. Then it's not toxic. But if she's not actually doing a bad job and I say so, then it's toxic. But the question is, would that be toxically masculine or toxically feminine?
And that would be lying. Why are you lying to her? She's doing a good job.
Well, that's what makes it toxic. It's a hypothetical toxicity. It's not actual toxicity.
Hey, Cam deserves a raise. Don't lie to her.
I won't.
Well, I think if your message is direct and it's not like hidden behind some FE or FI, it might be toxic masculine. But if it's like
direct
hey,
lie,
Cam, well, because that's the distinction. That's the difference. The difference between it. Like one is direct, the other one is indirect.
So can you have a direct lie versus an indirect lie?
Correct. Yeah. So women will be like, if okay, so toxic feminine is like, okay, not toxic, but a feminine behavior might be, it's like, hey, okay, so I'm going to pretend I'm a woman right now. It's like, so so try to approach me, try to seduce me, Eric.
Hey there, Casita. What's going on?
Hi. Oh my gosh, I'm okay. What about you?
I'm doing pretty good. Just walking around here. And I looked over and I was like, oh my god, that has got to be the most stunningly beautiful one I've ever seen in my life. I gotta go say hi. So I just came over here to say hi to you. You're smoking hot.
Okay.
So, what were you going to display with your feminine nature to me? You wanted to display some sort of notion about masculinity.
You're supposed to ask me out. You're supposed to ask me out.
Oh, I'm supposed to ask you out. Okay, sorry. So anyway, later on, I've got tickets to the Queen's Ball here in London. I'm on vacation. The Queen invited me to her ball, and I'm looking for a date. And I'm like, so they got these rad-ass tickets to the Queen's Ball. I'm going to go ask some smoking hot chick out and see if she'll go with me. Will you go?
Well, you see, yeah, okay, that's fine. Yeah, sure, okay.
Okay, well, give me your address. I'll pick you up, or someplace, an address, pick you up near your house. If you don't want to give me your address, that's fine. You can put it at like a 7-Eleven near your house. I'll pick you up at 6:45.
In, Kazita inserts false address and false number. Okay, thank you, see you later. Okay, that's feminine behavior. Lying about refusing to be direct, saying that you're not interested because you think he'll kill you.
So is that toxic? Is that toxic femininity?
Well, correct, because it is lying, and lying is wrong, or telling truth that isn't really true. That is toxic because the guy is now expecting something, but when he gets home, he tries to call, and it's like doo. The number you're calling cannot be recognized. Please try again. Beep. And that's wrong. You've inflicted pain inside another person who's an agent being as well, based on your lie to them. If you just told them the truth, yeah, he wouldn't be upset. Now, he might still follow you around, which is now the toxic masculine behavior, which is not accepting a no for an answer and kind of trying your luck over and over again. But then again, that's a whole different dynamics altogether. So yeah, the toxic feminine behavior is to not lie necessarily, but to misrepresent the truth in order to escape a situation that you don't like.
Yeah, what was their only form of escape?
Well, the thing that didn't really resonate as true about that whole thing, Kaizo, is that obviously the chick would not have said no.
No, she wouldn't say no.
No. So.
And that's the toxic feminine behavior, because she should say no.
Because to say no, she would have given me the real number, and she would have.
Oh no! Right. Well, that is a toxic feminine behavior. Women should be accountable and say the truth and say what they mean when they mean it.
But what's so toxic about it? I mean, it's not really that toxic, because it's like, if I'm a dude.
You think lying is okay?
Okay, no. What I'm saying is, if I'm a dude, getting shot down like that, be given a fake number or something, is no less unpleasant than getting shot down directly. I don't necessarily mind getting shot down like that. I recognize it as a way of getting shot down, not as, oh, this woman I just randomly approached to try to ask out, lied to me? To me?
Right, but that's your interpretation. Someone else, especially if they're not used to this whole game, they would be hurt. They have this high expectation.
My definition of toxic is better. My definition of toxic requires that there be some actual something wrong with it that is universal, such as
lying. You think lying is wrong.
But that's not. But look, what I'm saying is the thing that makes something. That's not how I defined it. What I pointed out was the thing that makes something toxic in terms of its whatever first of all, it's toxic towards somebody. It's not toxic in a vacuum. And the thing that makes it toxic is because it's either ontologically violent or actually violent in some capacity. In other words, actually rights violating or identity dismissing or reducing in some capacity. But I don't think that's what's happening there.
So you don't think that someone lying to someone else? So okay? Why is lying a bad thing in principle?
Because you're treating another person as a means to an end, technically.
Exactly. So then that actually validates your whole experience.
Doesn't mean the other person is victimized by it. And right now we're talking about a behavior that necessarily occurs not in a vacuum of a hypothetical, but between two actual people. And you're not considering the fact that there are two actual alternatives that are involved there. One of which is getting shot down directly, and one of them is getting shot down indirectly. Not that there's some third alternative that's preferable to either of them.
Right. But that's a macro scale analysis. But earlier, from the principle state, you stated that one is toxic. Masculinity is toxic if it treats another individual as a means for an end.
Okay, fine. I agree. I agree with you, except you're right that you caught me there. You did successfully catch me. And my answer to that is, I guess I misspoke somewhat earlier. I shouldn't have said it that way. I should have said 15 minutes. Okay, I'm making a video. Just chill for a sec. I'm ready to go whenever you're ready to go. Whenever we're going to go.
You're not wearing slides to the baseball game.
Okay, well, bring me some shoes then.
I'm in the middle.
No, I'm in the middle of you give me fucking 5 minutes. God damn it!
You knew we were going to a wedding.
I still know we're going to a wedding. You said we're leaving in 15 minutes. Chill out. I'm not. Don't just come in here and just try to shut shit down like that. Like that's just rude and evokes this kind of response from me. For God's sakes. So okay, what the fuck was I saying? Okay, yeah, you caught me on that point there. It's not sufficient right there in order for us to determine it, because it's not an abstract moral question as a Kantian moral question might be. It's instead a moral question which you have to factor in how the other party would prefer it to be. It doesn't have any moral status outside of that. So the question of the lying is secondary and separate from the question of what one ought to do there in that regard.
Okay, fair enough. Let me even say that has some truth in it. But then could you not say that no, you can't do that, because you can't separate the moral intent versus the action. Both have to be consistent. Meaning you have to be morally you have to have the right moral
It's a special circumstance. It's a special circumstance. It's a social mating dance. And you know that the only real alternative, that is either way, it's a communication of something much more basic than what this dance is purportedly conveying. You're trying to ignore the illocutionary frame. The dude's trying to get laid. The chick is going to signal to him whether she's willing to potentially fuck him or not, basically. And so that's the actual thing that's happening there, and the technical words are all part of this elaborate mating dance thing. So it's not quite the same thing as it would normally be. When you say she shouldn't lie to you, I still agree that from a sort of positive moral prescription sense, she ought prefer to not lie, and that from a negative moral prescription sense, conversely to how it normally would be, that the guy ought prefer her not to lie, because I think in general the guy might very well prefer her to lie. But even regardless of those two statements that I agree with, I still think they function as affirmative moral indications rather than negative moral prohibitions in this instance.
Right. But so basically you're negating the sense that morality should be universalized. Like lying is wrong regardless of your intentions with the lying, because it's still wrong, because it transgresses. My point is that we can have universals like that, and we should have universals like that, but we also need to remember that that they can't comprise an absolute metaframe. That the frame specifics of any individual particular case is going to shift where those principles lie in regard to other principles, and sometimes other principles will come into conflict, and we have to prioritize principles against principles sometimes. They're not always mutually consistent. Great. Let's accept that. Let's say what you're saying is somewhat roughly true. Now, consider the point where the male in the video went to so-called mansplain to the woman. Basically, the woman made a point which everyone else in the boardroom didn't quite agree with. So he went to so-called mansplain to the boardroom what she really meant. Now, that is being expressed as toxic masculinity. But if that was the case, that actually is the same thing that we're talking about here in regards to the mating dance, which is what was his intent? His intention was not to put her down, but to actually save her from herself because she wasn't adequately able to express.
I reject your interpretation of his intention there. Okay.
How?
Well, you could see it on his face, but regardless, remember there's two specific.
On his face.
Hey, listen. Hey, wait. What are your? Look, he had an unwanted touch. She did not want him to touch her shoulder, and she shouldn't have to endure that shoulder touch. I mean, frankly, that's how it. I don't want random people feeling entitled to touch my shoulder. If the boss comes over and is like, "Oh, Eric, you didn't quite get it right," and pats me on the shoulder, get your fucking hand off me, bitch. You know, of course I will.
Right.
So why should we think it's okay for him to do that to her?
Because he would do that to anybody else. Apart from my boss,
the fuck he would.
Sorry.
The fuck he would. He wouldn't do it to me.
Well, look. Okay, you see, you just shifted. You went from what he said versus what he did. He touched that. That's a whole different issue altogether. Now we're talking about.
Oh, I see. So he didn't say anything. The narrator spoke.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. He didn't say anything explicitly himself, but we're talking about the words that were being expressed in that moment, not the touch itself. I can agree that violating someone's personal space is a transgression, and that's wrong. That's
okay. All right. Listen. This is fun, Kaizo, and you're a worthy opponent. You're good. I gotta give you full props, dude. You're great. But I gotta split for this wedding. You did a great job. Let's call it a draw.
Okay.
All right. See you later.